Welcome to Hollywood Cafe's Star of the Week. I'm your host, Amanda Blackwood. His father dumped his mother in a mental institution and then told his son that she died. His brother was born in 1899, but the kid died 2 days before his first birthday in 1900 of tuberculosis meningitis. On January 18th in 1904, Archibald Alec Leach was born in Bristol, England. His father, Elias James Leach, had also been born in Bristol in 1872. Elias married Archibald's mother, Elise Maria Kingdon, on May 30 of 1889. At the age of 4, his mother taught him how to sing and dance and wanted him to have piano lessons too. She would take him to the cinema, and he loved Charlie Chaplin, Fatty Arbuckle, and many other greats of the time. He said that his mother didn't know how to give or receive affection, and that his mother blamed herself for her first son's death, John. She was overprotective. When he was 9 years old, his father dropped his mother off at a Glenside hospital, which was a mental institution, and told him that she had gone away for a long holiday. Later on, he told him that she had died. He grew up feeling like his mother had abandoned him. He hated her for that. Shortly after his mother vanished from his father, moved them into his grandparents' home. Only a year later, after his mother disappeared, his father remarried and started a whole new family. He met and befriended a troupe of acrobatic dancers known as Penders, or the Bob Pender Stage Troupe, and began training as a stilt walker. Touring with them was some of his earliest, happiest memories that he'd known. Shortly after, in 1915, he won a scholarship to attend a nice grammar school, but his father could barely afford to pay for the uniform. He excelled at all sports, and his good looks made him pretty popular. But he did have a reputation for mischief, and he hated doing his homework. One classmate called him a scruffy little boy, and a teacher remembered him as the naughty boy who was always making a noise in the back row. He started hanging out at the Bristol theaters every chance he got. He picked up lighting work at 13 years old, volunteering in the summer as a messenger, becoming a guide for the military docks in Southampton, all this to escape his unhappy childhood. He desperately wanted to travel, and he tried to sign on as a ship's cabin boy, but he was too young. In March of 1918, this 14-year-old Archie was expelled from school. There were a number of different explanations that were cited all over the internet, including him being found in the girls' bathroom, assisting to other classmates with a theft in a nearby town, and a lot more. Some accounts claim that he was intentionally trying to get expelled so that he could leave for good, and he did rejoin Pender's troop 3 days after his expulsion. When the authorities caught wind and started asking why Archie wasn't staying with his own father, the story goes that his father co-signed a 3-year contract for Archie to join Pender. It stipulated Archie's weekly salary along with room and board, dance lessons, and other training for his profession until he was 18 years of age. There was also a provision in the contract for salary raises based on his job performance. But before you go thinking his dad finally did something nice for him, let me stop you right there. In reality, his father signed nothing. Archie had forged his signature. The Pender Troupe, which included 7 other members, toured the United Kingdom, and his talent grew with practice, broadening his range through pantomime and physical skills. In July of 1920, they boarded the RMS Olympic to conduct a tour in the United States, arriving on the 21st of July when he was just 16 years old. Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford were both on that same ship for the same voyage, returning from their honeymoon. A young Archie played shuffleboard with Douglas Fairbanks, and he became a role model to him. The troupe performed at the Hippodrome in New York City, which was the largest theater in the world at the time, with a capacity of 5,697 patrons. They performed for 9 straight months, 12 shows a week. He loved it so much that he decided to stay. So he left the Penders to return to the UK and became part of the vaudeville circuit instead. He toured St. Louis, Cleveland, Milwaukee. Eventually, he made his way back to the East Coast, and when the family who owned Steeplechase Park learned of his acrobatic experience, he was hired as a stilt walker to attract large crowds at the brand new Coney Island Boardwalk. He toured the U.S. for a while and visited Los Angeles for the first time in 1924. When the group he was touring with split up, he returned to New York, where he performed at the National Vaudeville Artists Club, doing comedic sketches, juggling, performing acrobatics, and riding a unicycle. It was hard on him, but it gave him the chance to improve his comedic timing and technique. During this time, he loved watching the Marx Brothers, and Zeppo became another role model. His accent had begun to alter with the traveling that he had done. Eventually, it became what was known as a transatlantic or mid-Atlantic accent, that mix of English and American that we hear so often in the films of the 30s and 40s. Most of those accents were not natural. His was. He had failure after flop on Broadway for a while. He was cast as a Spaniard opposite Jeanette MacDonald in a risque comedy called Boom Boom at the Casino Theater on Broadway in 1929, just 10 days after his 25th birthday. Jeanette MacDonald later said that he was absolutely terrible in the role, but he had such a charm about him that endeared people to him that it saved the show from failure. When that ended, he moved to Detroit and later on to Chicago. He absolutely felt like a failure. To try to make himself better, he took what money he'd saved up and bought his first car, which was a 1927 Packard Sport Phaeton. Then he visited his half-brother in England and returned to New York, where he jumped into another Broadway production that premiered 2 days after the Wall Street crash in 1930. It lasted for 125 shows, though, which effectively kept him fed while so many in the country were going hungry. He finally admitted in 1931 that he was drawn to acting because he had a great need to be liked and admired. This likely stemmed from childhood trauma and his rocky home life and the absence of his mother. In 1932, Archie Leach finally got a contract with Paramount Pictures. Studio executives thought that his name, Archie Leach, was not quite suitable for a leading man in the movies, though. They gave him the name of Cary Grant, and he had it legally changed 9 years later in 1941. Cary Grant did not learn that his mother was still alive until he was 31 years old. His father confessed to his lie shortly before he died in February of 1935 at 62 years old. Right away, Cary Grant began making arrangements for his mother to leave the institution, but he couldn't find her until June of that year. He visited her for the first time in October of 1938 after filming Gunga Din. There's very little that I've been able to find about it, but I do know that it remained a strained relationship, and he felt like she was looking to receive money from him because he was now famous. He gave his entire fee for filming the Philadelphia story in 1940 to the British war effort for World War II, and he donated his entire salary for Arsenic and Old Lace to the U.S. War Relief Fund. But he actually did not like his performance in Arsenic and Old Lace. He felt like that performance was way too over the top. When his contract with Paramount expired, he became independent, which was very unusual for the time. He chose his own scripts for what would become a string of great hits, all of them being comedic, including Bringing Up Baby with Katharine Hepburn, His Girl Friday with Rosalind Russell, The Philadelphia Story. He was a favorite of Alfred Hitchcock. He was in 4 of his films, including North by Northwest, Notorious, Suspicion, To Catch a Thief. To Catch a Thief actually pulled him out of his retirement. It was the only thing that could. He became seriously sick with an infectious hepatitis and jaundice in 1948, and the doctors gave him less than a 10% chance of survival. The problem was the damage that years of heavy drinking had done to his liver. Cary Grant took more than 6 months to recover. Though he was nominated twice for Best Actor, his only Academy Award was an honorary Oscar in 1970. He was married 5 times. His only legitimate child was a daughter named Jennifer by his marriage to actress Diane Cannon. He retired from films in 1966, soon after the birth of his daughter. Cary Grant was 61 years old at that time. He became a very successful businessman, serving on the board of directors for such firms as Fabergé Cosmetics, Western Airlines, and MGM. During his career, he maintained a year-round suntan to avoid having to wear makeup. He remained close to Barbara Hutton's son, whose name was Lance, even after he divorced Barbara. Lance would regularly stay with Cary Grant on some weekends, and Grant referred to him as his son. He was absolutely devastated when Lance died in a plane crash. He even helped Barbara with the funeral arrangements. The late and wonderful Christopher Reeve said that he based his portrayal of Clark Kent in Superman on Cary Grant in his early part of his career. He always said To Catch a Thief co-star Grace Kelly was his absolute most favorite leading lady. He attended her state funeral in 1982, and he openly wept throughout the televised service. Thanks mainly to the strength and physical dexterity that he gained when he was an acrobat growing up, he did a majority of his own stunts throughout his entire film career, way more than people would really think. If you look closely at his teeth, you'll find that it only has one incisor, which is your front tooth. Apparently, when he was a boy, he knocked out a tooth while ice skating. Rather than getting into trouble with his father, he opted to go to a nearby dental college and have them gradually push his other teeth together to fill that gap. Though financially well off, he was considered tight by his servants. They reported that, among other things, he charged fans for his autograph. He marked the height of the liquor in every bottle, counted the logs for the fireplace, and kept a detailed record of how much food was bought and how much was consumed. However, he was well liked by his servants and paid them very well. Most of those unusual traits can likely be attributed to his impoverished childhood and struggling during the Great Depression. He fell madly in love with Sophia Loren in 1957 while they were filming The Pride and the Passion. He was 53, she was 22. At the time, he was still married to actress Betsy Drake, and Sophia Loren was involved with a 45-year-old producer, Carlo Conti, who was also married. Both men eventually separated from their wives and proposed to Sophia Loren at the same time. She chose Carlo. Cary Grant never played a villain, and he hated method acting almost as much as he hated method actors. He wore a gold chain around his neck with 3 charms attached. The 3 charms represented the religions of each of his former wives. A St. Christopher medal for Virginia Sherrill. She was Roman Catholic. A small cross for Barbara Hutton and Betsy Drake, who were both Protestants. And a Star of David for Diane Cannon, who was Jewish. In 1971, Cary Grant was so terrified that Diane Cannon would disappear with their daughter to New York and Europe, and he'd never see her again. He was so scared that he filed for joint custody. When the judge ruled that Jennifer should remain in California with her father, taking time out to visit her mother, he was ecstatic. He would spend every evening waiting for her to come back from school and every weekend teaching her to ride a horse. Within 8 weeks of this, he had sold the rights to his last films with Universal for more than $2 million. He did his best to dissuade her from becoming an actress. It didn't work. Ian Fleming once stated in an interview that the character of James Bond was based on what he knew of Cary Grant. In his lifetime, he was nominated for 2 Oscars, one for his 1942 performance in Penny Serenade, which is one of my personal favorite films, and the other for his 1945 film None But the Lonely Heart for Best Actor in a Leading Role. But in 1970, he was given the honorary award for his unique mastery of the art of screen acting with the respect and affection of his colleagues. He was very proud of this. He was nominated in 1965 for a BAFTA for Charade with Audrey Hepburn. He was nominated for 5 Golden Globes, 16 Laurel Awards, 1 New York Film Critics Circle Award, and 1 Photoplay Award. He was the winner of the Kennedy Center Honors in 1981 and posthumously awarded the 2002 Hall of Fame Award for acting. Cary Grant had been retired from acting for 20 years at the time of his death. His last credit was as Sir William Rutland in Walk, Don't Run, released in 1966. But his final appearance at the Academy Awards was in 1985 to present James Stewart with an honorary Oscar for Lifetime Achievement. He died on November 29, 1986 in Davenport, Iowa, while on a successful lecture tour and audience with Cary Grant. In 2023, Diane Cannon was the executive producer of a British television drama series, Archie, about his life. According to his will, dated November 26, 1984, his body was to be cremated and no funeral service held. His ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean. Do you have a favorite actor or actress you'd like to see me doing one of these videos on? Tell me in the comments.